Hello, welcome back to another episode of Weapon Christ Podcast, a show where we encourage you to find spiritual and financial balance in your life through the abundance grace of God. On the podcast today, we have Mr. Alex Kamunyo. I hope I said that right.
Yep.
Who is one of the hosts of Money podcast. And in addition, he's currently owns six rental unit as well as runs a six-figure cleaning business. Today, we're going to focus mainly on Mr. Alex's journey in real estate and how he has gained major success investing so far. So thank you for being here, Mr. Alex.
No problem. I appreciate you having me, man.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Doing well. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So, how did you get started in real estate? What made you get started in real estate?
Man, I got into real estate about 3 years ago now. And just because I really, growing up, you get told to go to school and, get a safe job. And I did that whole thing and I started working in January of 2018 and I kind of realized that I don't really want to do this for the rest of my life. So that's when I looked into some other routes and found real estate investing just through reading and doing a lot of research. And that's kind of that's what led me into getting into real estate investing. I got started in 2019 or 2018 when I bought my first property that summer. It was the duplex, and you just live in one side and rent out the other side.
Okay, but why real estate over other financial like stock market, forex, um, other businesses? Why did you pick real estate?
So I used to watch a lot of like real estate investing TV shows, like HGTV and stuff when I was growing up. And I would see them flipping houses and seeing how much money they were making, flipping houses. It always intrigued me. So it was always something that was in the back of my head. And so when I started researching and reading, about financial freedom and early retirement, real estate investing was one of the, most common routes that people use to achieve financial freedom, just based off the fact that real estate gives you cash flow, which is uh, the money left over every month after you pay all your expenses, and that's the money you can live off of to continue to live your life and to supplement your lifestyle. And so with the stock market or all these other routes, most of them you can get dividends in the stock market, but you got to put a considerable amount of money into the stock market to get enough dividends to be able to live off of, right? As opposed to real estate, if you get 5 properties that can generate you 200 a month in positive cash flow, then you got $1,000 a month right there. So it's a more streamlined route to me. That was my biggest, that was the biggest attraction point to me. And then obviously, real estate, it builds wealth in the same way that those like the stock market does too, because real estate appreciates in value. But I love real estate even more than the stock market because your tenants pay down the loan for you, so you build wealth that way. And the like I said, the property increases in value, and you get tax benefits too. So there's multiple ways to build wealth with real estate, and then on top of all that, you don't have to even use your own money to buy it. It's the only business in the world where you can go to a bank and they'll give you 96.5% of the value of the business to get started, right, with no experience. Any other business, you go to a bank and they're going to ask you to, be putting at least 50% down for a business loan. So those are the most attractive things to me about real estate.
That's definitely great. That's definitely great. So I definitely want to talk about how do you go about buying property. You talk about how you can use money. You don't use money in the bank's money. So how do you go about choosing a property?
I mean, it's all about being able to know how the numbers look. I mean, number one, it depends on your strategy. If you're flipping houses or you're doing rental properties, every strategy is different. So, you look at properties differently just based off what you're doing. But it's all based on the numbers and knowing the math. That's the most important thing when getting into a deal, because you don't make money whenever you sell or whenever you refinance a property. You make money whenever you buy it. So you got to make sure you're buying it right. And in order to do that, you got to know your math, know your numbers, so that you're analyzing the deal right. So that's what they always try to emphasize to people, is just to know the numbers and know how to analyze a deal. And that's what I teach in my course and on YouTube and all that kind of stuff as well.
Okay, and you mentioned, to know the numbers and also know what you want to do, whether it's flipping or cash flow. So how do you decide whether you're gonna flip the property or gonna keep it long term and get cash flow pay off the property?
I mean, for me, everyone's strategy is different, but me personally, right now, I'm flipping houses just based off the fact that my long term goal is to, buy apartment complexes. So, in order to do that, you're gonna need a few $1 million to put down. And in order for me to get a few $1 million, I gotta do something. So choose to flip houses because that's a good way to generate cash. Just and so that's people. There's people out there that are flipping houses just to flip houses to make money, but flipping houses is a job because the moment you stop flipping houses, you stop making money. And like I said, I didn't want to work a job, so that's the only reason I'm flipping houses is to generate that cash to get to the next thing. That's why you got to know what your long term and term goal is and work backwards from that.
That's great. So is there anything you're looking specifically since you're focusing right now on just flipping houses, what do you like look into the property for like, oh, this is a good deal for me to flip? So what do you look at?
It's really based on the spread. If the numbers are wide enough. I mean, there's 100 million things I look at, but I can't get into everything. So I think the biggest thing to look at really for me is the spread. If the margin is wide enough between the purchase and the after repair value, which is what it's worth after it's fixed up, then it's worth possibly pursuing just based on the fact that, I know with a good, standard deviation of what the rehab cost will be. So, if as long as I'm in a good ballpark as far as the rehab and the margins are good, I know it's probably a good deal to pursue. So it saves a lot of time when I'm analyzing, looking at deals that get sent to me because I know exactly what I'm looking for. Usually out here, it's different in every city all over the country, but down here in South Texas, it's more so like if I can see something that's $100,000 spread between the purchase price and the resale value, then it's worth pursuing. Because typically the rehab costs, if it's a like a $30,000 to $40,000 rehab and the spread is 100,000, there's a potential to make 70,000, 60,000, and 50,000 gross profit in there, and that's definitely something worth pursuing if it's a pretty easy deal.
That's 100% right. I want to go back to something you said earlier in terms of tax benefit. Can you elaborate on the tax benefit you get as being a real estate investor?
Yeah, so one thing I was trying to tell people is that you got to understand that taxes are an incentive system by the government. It's an incentive to do what the government wants you to do. So when you do things the government wants you to do, you get rewarded, right? Because anyone that operates in the employee, quadrant of life and you operate as an employee, you get taxed the most because you're not doing what the government wants you to do, right? And when I say doing what the government wants you to do, I'm saying they want you to provide things for society. They want you to contribute to society economically, right? And so if you're just an employee, you're not really contributing to society. You're just contributing to yourself whenever you go and get a job, right? That's all you're really doing. So whenever you are operating as an investor or a business owner, you operate on a different tax formula, right? And because the tax code is 77,000 pages, but a majority of those pages, very few of those pages show you what to pay, and most of them show you how not to pay. But the thing is, most people don't operate as a business owner or investor, so they don't get to take advantage of those other ones of how not to pay. So as a real estate investor, you know, it's different if you're doing flips or rental properties, right? When you're flipping houses, you don't really get many tax breaks besides, the deductions for your expenses, which is significant. But that's any business. Any business gets, whenever you pay taxes, you pay taxes on your net income, everybody, right? But as an employee, you don't have many deductions to take advantage of. So you're just taxed on your gross income. But as a business owner, you're taxed at your income, right? Minus your expenses. So when you're flipping houses, you have your income, you deduct all your expenses, which could be your rehab costs, it could be your traveling costs, it could be, meals that you might have spent, it could be, subscriptions that you have, it could be, property costs, holding costs, all those things are considered expenses, right? Holding, title fees, all those things. So you subtract all that in your tax based off of that. Not, you don't, that, I mean, that's not much of a tax break in that aspect, but the biggest tax break comes from actually owning rental properties. And so when you own rental properties, like I said, you're doing what the government wants you to do. You're providing homes for people, right? You're providing housing for people. So the government is like, hey, we want to incentivize you to continue doing that. So we'll give you tax breaks in the form of depreciation, which is the number one tax break that real estate investors get. Whenever you own rental properties, residential real estate, you can essentially deduct the value of the structure of the property, right? So if I don't have a property, if I have a piece of real estate that's worth 100,000, and the property is worth, or the land it sits on is worth 20,000, and the structure itself is worth 80,000, according to the county tax assessor, then that means I can subtract the structure of my land, and subtract the value of my land, and I can depreciate the value of the structure over 27 and a half years for residential real estate. So I know it sounds complicated, but just think about it like this. If I have a property worth 100,000, structure 80,000, or a property worth 100 and the land worth 20, that means the structure is worth 80. So if I take 80, divide that by 27 and a half, I think that's like 2,300. That's $2,300 a year that I'm able to claim as an expense, additional expense. So if I had a property I was making $200 a month in positive cash flow, right? Like I said, that's usually what I aim for, $200 a month per unit. So if I have a single family house making $200 a month, that's $2,400 a year. So if I have that property's worth, 100,000, and I get that $2,300 per year tax deduction, I get to now from that 2,400, I get to deduct another 2,300, right? So now I'm only taxed on $100 of income for that year, as opposed to getting taxed on that $2,400 of net income, right? Because that depreciation is essentially a paper loss. It's not a physical loss you're taking, but the government allows you to take that paper loss in the form of depreciation. So now that's why a lot of real estate investors pay nothing in taxes. They pay absolutely nothing in taxes because of depreciation. Because now when you scale that to, 100 million or a billion or 100 billion, you can make a lot of money, but the depreciation is massive. So that's probably the number one. There's so many tax breaks. We're not gonna get into them, but there's so many. That's probably the number one.
That's pretty dope. And with the tax rate, can you just subtract the whole bill at once of the house, or has to do it like over time, over 27 years?
Sorry, repeat that.
Can you subtract the cost of the house, such as depreciation taxes? Can I just take $100,000 depreciation taxes in 1 year, or gotta do it over the 27 years? We have 2,300.
Yeah, so it would have to be over the 27 and a half years. So it's different for different industries. Like they call it Section 179 depreciation, and then there's bonus depreciation. So that was one of the things that got introduced with the 2017 Trump tax bill was you can for certain things, like for vehicles in a business or something, you can deduct the entire value of that vehicle in 1 year. But for residential real estate and commercial real estate, you can't necessarily do that. And I wouldn't necessarily want to do that, because you want to be able to take advantage of that every single year. I don't want to have to pay absolutely nothing in taxes 1 year and then pay, taxes later years. I mean, yeah, you can always carry it over, and that's essentially what would happen. But, yeah. So, but to answer your question straightforward, I mean, you wouldn't really be able to take the entire $80,000 depreciation up in 1 year. I mean, unless you're making $80,000, which you're obviously not making $80,000 a year off of a single family house, then there would be no point in trying to do that. But yeah,
that makes sense. So, what are some books and research that help you so far in your journey as an investor?
I listened to a lot of podcasts, Bigger Pockets, real estate podcasts. I read a lot of their books. That was really probably the main sources of my real estate education, from Bigger Pockets, that podcast, and then a lot of their books that they put out, are really good for people looking to get into real estate as well, just because it teaches you a lot of the fundamentals and the basics.
That makes sense. And what are some challenges have you faced to get to this point of success where you're able to see a property and like, okay, this is a flip, compared to when you first started?
I think, you know, just at this point, I mean, now it's just about trying to manage, different aspects of the business. But there's always, challenges now at this point. Just with growing and doing more, you get more money is more problems in most situations. But you just have to really, kind of just learn how to handle them. You just learn how to handle them up front. I mean, I just lost some money on a deal that I'm closing on Thursday. Lost like I think 15 to 20,000, maybe 10 to 20,000 on that one. It happens. Even I'm still losing money. I mean, I'm doing different things, so that's the reason I lost money is I'm not. That doesn't necessarily mean other people would lose money that way. If you follow, certain I deviated from something I usually do. That's why I lost money. But I don't necessarily think that's a challenge to me. I don't really see that there's any challenges in the business right now. Everything that happens, even if it's what people would consider a failure, it's always a learning opportunity to get better, because with every deal you learn something and you get better.
That's a great way to look at the challenges you face. So now my next question: how did you go from getting into real estate? Now you have a cleaning business. How did you know go into that?
Yeah, I mean, it was just really, just I tried a bunch of different things. I have a bunch of different businesses right now. I tried a bunch of different things last year just because, my formula to wealth is, you take your 9 to 5 job, you start a business, and you take your business money and you buy real estate. And that's kind of my formula that I came up with, that I'm using to get financial freedom and to also build wealth. So, the business to me is just a business that's making money. It's not that I'm necessarily passionate about cleaning houses or whatever. I mean, I don't clean houses, but I'm passionate about financial freedom and creating a legacy and something I can pass to my kids. And a business is a wonderful asset that I could, create and own, and something that can generate a lot more cash flow than real estate can. Real estate is great for building wealth, but business is great for the actual life freedom, the lifestyle it can provide you, and the cash flow that you can get from it, right? But all that money just goes back into real estate to continue to build the wealth. So it's like a cycle. But yeah, that's kind of why I started doing that.
Okay. So being as I said, you're in multiple, do you have like a goal amount? Like, I'll make 10 mil. If I get that to when I reach that financial freedom for myself, or do you have a certain goal that you're trying to reach?
As far as what?
Being the fact that you said you're pulling money from different businesses, so you can get to a certain point where you can live the kind of lifestyle that you want to live. So being that said, is there a number goal that you have?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I always said originally my goal has always changed. I mean, right now my number is 50,000 a month. By in the next 3 years, that's what I want to be earning from my business, from real estate. And have at least $1 million net worth. And that's kind of what I'm working towards right now. I think I'm pretty confident that I should get there even before then. But who knows? It's just taking the challenges day by day. I mean, nobody first saw a global pandemic happening. So, anything could literally happen within the next 3 years that could derail that. But it's just a matter of time if I'm going to hit it or not. So that's kind of what I'm working towards right now.
And how have you able to pivot, whether it's real estate or cleaning through a pandemic? How have you continued to be successful? What are some things that people can do to continue to be successful in the pandemic?
Sorry, did you say from? I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even hear you.
So I'm saying that, so based on being the fact that we're in a pandemic, how have you able to pivot your different businesses, whether it's real estate, cleaning, to continue to be successful through a pandemic?
Yeah, I think. I mean, you just got on this. Most of the business I have now, I started during the pandemic, so that has already been a built-in factor into everything. And then as for real estate, that's actually only helped improve the real estate, just because real estate's super competitive right now, and that's another reason I'm flipping houses, because you can get top dollar for everything. I'm doing like a $450,000 flip right now that I would never normally do in a normal market, but right now I know it could sell. So it's kind in real estate, it's kind of had the reverse effect in terms of like, it's actually helped in that aspect. But as far as businesses, most of the businesses have actually been started after that. So I haven't necessarily had to pivot in that time since, the pandemic had began.
That's great. I want to ask you a question. So, being the fact that you talk about the $450,000 project you're working on, would you say it's important to understand your risk management? Because that you never know when the market is going to change, where it's going to become a buying market. So, how do you manage your risk management in terms of getting to different flips?
Yeah, so I mean, it's always understanding, you taking what the market can give you. Right now, the market is telling me that you could pretty much sell anything, and you can list anything, and it's gonna sell. I mean, anything. I put a piece of land under contract, for $100,000, a couple of days ago. I mean, you can do that now. And so, for me, like I said, before this market and this environment, this seller's market really heightened. I mean, it's been a seller's market probably for the last 5 years generally in terms of the direction, but it really has heightened, obviously over the past 12 months. So before like COVID and all that, I wasn't necessarily like doing like a $500,000 flip because there'll be a lot less buyers for that. But right now there's buyers in everything because everyone's trying to buy because money is so relatively cheap right now just because the interest rates are near zero. So it's a good time to try to do that. So right now, if there's any time to try to do a higher dollar flip, it's definitely now, because when things do transition back, I will definitely not do that, and I'll be back doing 200 to probably 150 to $200,000 flips. That's to be my sweet spot down here in Texas. I know in other places that's not realistic, but down here in Texas and South Texas, that's typically what I like to aim for. So, but as far as risk management, you got to really just understand the market and understand the macroeconomic landscape of things too. Because right now, I understand like the government. I really don't see them allowing this market to go anywhere besides the direction it is going. Because it's completely manipulated. There's so much money printing going on. Stimulus, quantitative easing, low interest rates, all these, things that are kind of creating the environment that we're living in. Obviously, we had the lumber shortage, and then we have, obviously like people are moving down south. So you just got to understand the landscape of things, and whenever you are making decisions, especially a long term, deal that you're looking to get into. If it's a, 2 or 3 month project, it's not that big a deal. But if it's like a 6 to 12 or a longer project, you got to understand because things could switch in any moment. I doubt it'd be very drastic if things did switch. It'd probably be a gradual transition. Maybe if they increase interest rates and those kind of things, but you just got to understand the kind of the landscape of how the economy is looking right now. That's how I manage risk.
That's good. And one thing I realized based on just talking to you that you have a great insight of everything that's going around you. So how important is like staying on top of the different pieces of law policies and everything? How important is that?
I think it's very important. I mean, I think it's I make a lot of videos on YouTube just in terms of, I just made a video like a week or two ago about the proposed Biden tax policy, just based on the fact that, I mean, these are important things to know because they affect everybody, even if it's not necessarily directly. There's going to be a residual or trickle down effect in the economy that's going to come down to you. So it's important to understand everything going on in not everything going on, but the things that could possibly affect your business, and just having a good grip on, or a good pulse on the market and the economy and how politics will affect it as well is very important, especially if you're going to, be the CEO of a business, because it's your responsibility. That's what I think a lot of people don't realize, that because you come into the business world with such an employee mindset, you just, that's someone else will worry about that. But you gotta understand, when you're coming into business now, you are the CEO, you are the entrepreneur. So it's now your responsibility to have a pulse on, how things are going, even of things that are far many degrees removed from even how it would impact your business directly. So, because like I said, everything will have a trickle down effect, and having that visionary kind of mindset and mentality is, what kind of separates people that can create a successful, long-term, sustainable business, or someone that just, they make some money in a short cycle, and then they kind of fall out because they weren't prepared for what was going to come.
100% right. And I guess my next question to you: how do you go about growing your mindset on a daily basis?
Say it again.
How do you go about growing your mindset and expanding your mindset on a daily basis?
I think it's just based on a lot of educating and a lot of reflection. I mean, I listen to a lot of video. I watch a lot of videos, and I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I read a lot of books. I'm always learning. That's the number one thing I'm always trying to do. Even doesn't matter what I'm doing, I'm always learning. And it might not even necessarily be something that is financial. It's just something that is I'm growing personally in some way. Just because, I mean, I consider myself an autodidact, which is someone that is just, you are encompassed with, just self-education and making sure that you're educated on every even things that don't pertain to you. I like to read things that don't pertain to me because that's how you gain new insight. Because if you only read things that pertain to you, then you're only going to, get perspectives that relate to you directly in somehow, some way. So I like to, even see how other people think about other random topics. Just because, it's important to have some sort of awareness on everything that's going on around you. So that self-education is the biggest thing, man. I mean, most people aren't groomed like that, but it's something you got to develop. You have to become an avid self-educator, and it's not necessarily to say you got to read books, but whatever your way of learning is, if it's listening to podcasts, if it's watching YouTube videos, you got to be educating yourself on a consistent basis.
All right. And for someone that's looking into getting into real estate, how would you advise for them to get into real estate right now?
I think, I mean, if you can get in right now, I mean, it's super hot right now. So you had to really be creative right now. I'm not gonna lie, even when I got in 3 years ago, it was a lot easier to get in. And that's the crazy part because even back then, people were sitting on the sidelines. And now they're really sitting on the sidelines. So you got to really, at this point now, if you're not able to think creatively and put together a deal creatively, you're going to struggle because the dynamic of things changes and you can't expect things to be the same all the time. I mean, the economy is always changing. Like business is like it's like the craziest sport because even at least in sports, things are the same no matter what. Like I mean, the dynamic of how the sport is played changes over years, but generally speaking, the structure of the game is still the same. But in business, things are getting thrown at you all the time. So in real estate, it's the same thing. So right now, I mean, there's house hacking is a great way to always get in. That's always going to be my number one way I recommend people get in is because, if you have a first time home buyer, you qualify for so many programs that can allow you to buy a property with little to no money right now, with super low interest rates, which is just insane. Yeah, you're going to be buying at the top of the market, or what we perceive as the top of the market. So you're going to be buying a lot higher than you would want to. But that's just the nature of the beast right now. So house hacking is a great way to get in, live in one unit, rent out the other side, use a FHA loan, conventional 3%, a 3.5% FHA, 3% conventional, 0% conventional, all these loan programs out there for first time home buyers that you can use to get into the game. I would say that's probably my number one way I recommend getting in.
That's good. And being affected the market at the top of it's essentially at the top. What would you say to someone that just wanted to wait but time the market? I'm gonna wait till the market cools down to get in.
You'll be waiting for a very long time. You're gonna be waiting for a very long time. People were saying that in 2018. Like I said, if I would have sat there and said, yeah, I think stuff is just too expensive. Let me just wait a little bit. I'll be sitting here now with my pants on my ankles. Cause now at this point, the properties that I bought this property that I'm in right now for $155,000. Now it's worth $195,000. I could easily go sell it for 200,000 right now, and it wouldn't cash flow at all at this price point, right? And so right now, I mean, it's gonna be harder to cash flow. You're gonna have to be very creative. You might have to, do things like build a tiny house in the backyard and rent that out to get additional income. You just gotta be more creative today. So it's gonna take more money to get in now because the market is expensive. So the longer you wait, you're just putting off your financial freedom. You're putting off your wealth. You don't know. That's like trying to predict the future. You don't know what's going to happen. Nobody could have predicted cold. Anyone that was, I promise you, there was people sitting there in 2019 saying, yeah, I'm gonna wait till summer of 2020 to get in. Yeah, how did that go for you? Because summer 2020 came, a pandemic hit. We thought the pandemic would have let things cool down, but it was actually a opposite effect because of the demand. People were working from home now. People were like, oh, I don't have to, live downtown. I can go buy a house anywhere I want and just work remotely, right? And so who could have perceived that? Who could have saw that coming? So it's like you don't know what's going to happen. And if 2020 didn't show you that, it might not be meant for you then to get into real estate. You might need to look at something else because you sound like you're just scared then at that point.
You're right. You're definitely right. Now, what you tell us about your podcast, Money Monopolizer? What made you start on your podcast? I know you do it with a partner of yours.
Yeah. So the podcast. A couple years ago, was talking to my sister, and she, we had so many conversations, and I had so many conversations with Marlon, and she had brought up the idea too that what you should start a podcast and just because you talk about this stuff already so much, it'd be good to just start a podcast. And I just kind of just did it just because yeah, it sounds good, so let's just try it and see what happens. And podcasts are something that's so relatively new. I mean, just the word itself, it was created in 2005. So this is like it hasn't even been 20 years since podcast was started. So right now it's like a great dynamic to create a podcast just based on the fact that there's very little competition. Like there aren't a lot of options for people to go listen to. Like if you go search for a business or investing podcast, you might see a lot, but it's not a lot of good ones. So if you can, create something good, then you definitely have opportunity to do that. And so there was that, avenue of it. And then also the fact that it was a great way to kind of build your brand up. And, everybody has a brand, whether you know it or not. And so for me, I saw the podcast and I see the podcast as a great way for my brand to live beyond just what people see from me on a daily basis or on a, social media basis, right? Because people can listen to podcasts all over the world. I mean, there's thousands of people all over the world that have heard, our podcast, and I have never met them and I never will meet them, but they know me. And so now if my name ever comes up in a room anywhere, I'm being associated now with this subject that we're talking about, which is the goal of the podcast, right? Because for me, I want to occupy people's mind share as the real estate, the money, the business, the financial freedom guy. So if anytime my name comes up, one of those things needs to be being mentioned after my name or with my name in the same sentence. And the podcast is a great way to build your brand how you want it to be built, because people listen to you. People build a relationship. Like I have people call me like, man, I feel like I've been talking to you for so long, and I hadn't talked to them in 2 months. It's because they was listening to the podcast for so long, and it's just like, it's crazy. And that's the dynamic of the world that we live in. And right now, like I said, it's still early. So I'd encourage everybody to have a podcast, even if anybody that's like wants to be known in any way. A podcast is a great way, regardless of what you want to do. Obviously the more niche you can go, the better. But if you're doing cooking, right? If you're doing gardening, if you're doing whatever, there's a niche for you. If you're doing laundry, there's a niche for a podcast anywhere. So it's a great way to, do that. And I mean, your niche too, wealth in Christ. That's a very specific niche, which is great because that's a very specific target audience that you're looking for. And, if people resonate with you, that's a great opportunity to build like a really strong, loyal following and, spread your message through that. So
Right. So where do you see yourself in the next 5 years, um, personally, whether real estate or just in business?
Yeah, I think I definitely want to or I definitely see myself being financially independent, and earning, a good amount of money and being able to just, live life on my own terms, not having to work for anyone ever. And just, being able to continue to spread the message of financial freedom. Because I think more and more people are finding out about it every day, that it's something that's possible. And I just try to really let my life be an example to people that it is possible, to retire at whatever age. I mean, I'm 24 years old, and I mean, it's just surreal. I mean, I thank God literally every day just for, the opportunities and the blessings that He's allowed me to kind of just be able to experience so far. Because I think um, it's it hasn't come easy, but it definitely, is well deserved, I think. Just based on how hard that I work at it, and I just want to show people, like, look, you can do this too. You're gonna have to work hard, but if you're willing to, I promise the price is going to the reward is going to be worth the price. It's and I always like to say too, freedom might be free, but it has a price. So, that's definitely my goal, is to continue to show people, more and more people, and that's what the goal with the podcast is, to spread that message and let our lives be an example to millions of people that they can do the same thing.
My last question would be, how does your faith in God, help you encourage you stay on this path and keep on going despite the obstacles, challenges that comes your way? How do your faith in God keep you going?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that is the foundation of everything. And when things do come up, I always feel a sense of peace and calmness, just because I know it's gonna work out, just based on the fact that my faith is built in a firm foundation, um, with Jesus, and everything I'm doing is in His glory. Um, and I'm doing exactly, what He wants me to do. So that's why I never. It's so important to me to have that faith, because it helps me stay at peace among everything. It could be so much chaos, everything. I mean, even over the last 12 months, I haven't experienced any. I mean, by many people's um, what by many people's estimation, or by many people's, you know perception, they would say some things I went through have been hard, and it's been hardships, and there've been, things that are hard but to me, even those things which I have gone through, they haven't necessarily been hard things to me, just based on the fact that, I mean, my faith has just been so strong that it's all part of the journey. And I know this is just how the story's supposed to unfold. So anytime something happens, I don't get flustered about it. I mean, little things I might get flustered about, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't get flustered, because I know it's all unfolding the way that God wants it to unfold, because that's a part of my testimony and my story for people. And I believe He wants to use me to show people that financial freedom is something that they can do. And it is, I feel like I know it's something that, God wants for people too, because I know it's something that can help improve a lot of people's lives. And a lot of people need to know about this. And a lot of people need to see this. A lot of people need to, understand that this is possible for them. And I think that's what I'm just a vessel for that message, because, my age and, just my background and how I look and how I talk is just like a lot of other people. I mean, there's nothing special about me except the fact that I just work hard. So that's to answer your question, the role that faith plays in my life.
Thank you. Thank you. I definitely want to say thank you for your time. I definitely want you to close it out with a word, where we can find you, and just a word of wisdom.
Yeah, man. I think y'all just really got to understand that, the the only thing that's really separating you from getting what you want in your life is knowledge and having some no wherewithal about how to actually do things, right? And then also discipline. Because once you have the knowledge and you have the blueprint, you had to be disciplined. Because you can have the blueprint, you can have the knowledge, but it's still not going to be easy. It's still going to be very, very tough, and things are going to come up, and you have to be able to delay gratification, and you have to implement self-discipline over your emotions, and be able to just do what you have to do, even if you don't want to do it, right? So that later you can do what you want to do. And so that's the biggest thing, man. Understanding that delayed gratification will pay dividends. So that's my word to the people. Y'all could definitely find me on Instagram. You can check out our podcast. It's Money Monopolizers Podcast. Money Monopolizer on Instagram. You can check out my personal page too. It's in the bio on there. But yeah, that's probably the best place to reach me is on my Instagram if you really want to reach out to me.
Thank you. I definitely want to say thank you again, Mr. Alex, for your time. It was definitely a pleasure to kick it with you. And for those who are listening, I hope you guys took a few gems from this and actually apply this to your life. Because no point in having information and not applying. So stay tuned for next week's episode. Thank you very much.